So I'm Colin Dorrance and I'm a resident of Lockerbie and a former pupil of Lockerbie Academy.
My name is David Whalley. I was the mountain rescue team leader of RAF Lookers Mountain Rescue Team at the Lockerbie disaster in 1988.
Right, there was a Christmas party to be held at the Queen's Hotel in Lockerbie, which is just to the south of the town actually. And I was about half a mile south of the town. In fact, I could see the hotel in front of me when there was a huge explosion, which seemed to be on the road just out of view around the corner. So luckily for me, there was a slip road near the hotel. I took that slip road and went into the town so that I wasn't affected by the debris on the road.
I was in the RAF Mountain Rescue Service, and our primary task is aircraft crashes. So sadly, in my 16 years in the team then, I'd seen quite a few aircraft crashes, but nothing like this. And as a team leader, you're responsible for up to 36 people.
I was 18. I just graduated from the police college, passed out at 18 and a half, and had been stationed away for 2 or 3 months until December, and this was supposed to be the first day of my first holiday. I saw this explosion from the ground up. There was nothing in the sky to indicate what had happened. I didn't see anything come down the way. As it turned out, the bomb had detonated in the air behind me and above me. More or less in the same position I was on the road 6 miles below. I did not know that at that time it was a Boeing 747 that had actually crashed, and what I saw was the wing section crashing into Shephard Crescent and igniting all the fuel that was in the wing section there.
I mean, it was a scene of absolute, it was like a nightmare, it was like a film set, it was Hades, it was everything rolled into one. You know, if you can imagine a small Scottish town on fire in the dark. We didn't really know what had happened. You could see the glow from miles. The main road was shut, and we drove into this kind of hell on earth. It was something that I'll never ever forget and never, hopefully, ever experience again. And in the air there was 11 helicopters, so it was just like something out of Vietnam, really, in the dark. But it was so dangerous. I said, just pull in there, and I did a recce, and I met up with the other guys, and they said, there's nothing we can do tonight. It's just too dangerous. And the big thing is, it was Christmas, so there's Christmas presents everywhere. But
Christmas just had to be dropped. It had to be forgotten about more or less straight away at that point. There was big concern in the town about who was missing and who had been affected and who had been unaccounted for at that time. So the whole night was a worry to everyone in the town, and all over the world there were relatives who were hearing about this plane crash in Lockerbie, and of course the phone system was down, and we didn't have the same communication you've got now to make sure that everyone was okay. So it took some time for the whole operation to settle into a routine and everyone get some sort of familiarity with what they were doing, and we had a range of duties. So there was a mortuary to be protecting and working in as well, which is a very difficult role. There were tons and tons of luggage to be brought in from the hills too. The whole recovery operation went on in the first few days 24/7 until most of the wreckage and all of the passengers were brought into the town.
And everybody felt helpless because we go out in the mountain rescue, civilian and military, we go out to save lives. I've spent my life, 40 years doing saving life. I was only been in the team 16, 17 years then, but we were used to recovering people, or if it's a fatality in the mountains, I mean, we're doing them all the time. We were doing quite a few nasty incidents, so we were used to it, but this was way out of the remit. And when you say to people, there is nothing you can do, they don't believe you. People want to help. And that's very hard to get nearly 300-400 people in the hall and say, you can't go out tonight. The guys are fighting the fires. The main thing is nobody else getting hurt, and we'll go at first light. And that is hard.
Because I was there from 7 p.m, I went home at 8:30 the next morning. I remember on breakfast TV, it was early days of breakfast television then, seeing footage of the relatives in JFK, and that was really quite difficult to watch because they were distraught. They were completely, obviously, but to make it real and make it very personal was it hit home, just what you'd been dealing with all night. So a sort of pattern of shifts. Everyone was working there. All rest days were cancelled. In fact, for the best part of 3 weeks to a month, it was a 12 to 16 hour shift that you did, and I naturally fell into a night shift. I was there really through most of January until the third or fourth week when the operation was scaled back a little bit. In the darkness, protecting crash sites and doing the kind of mortuary duties as you would, really until the major part of the recovery operation was over.
The first 3 days, we were only there for 3 days. Other people were there for months. And in this, because it was a scene of crime, no casualties can get moved, which is completely surreal. So there's very few casualties moved because everything was a scene of crime. Policemen had to be there. There was a couple moved originally, and then they had to stay where they were. So, and because we were restricting the entry, and we were going looking not just for casualties and plotting where they were, but aircraft wreckage, that was very important. Finding the black box, which we found first light, knowing where the wreckage is, so when the air investigation come in, there's a plan for them. And normally we can recover, as I said, but we couldn't. So the boys and girls and search dog people were covering the casualties because we didn't have enough stuff with jackets and things. And you got to know who the casualties were. And if you can imagine recovering, counting nearly 160 by the first day, that's pretty horrendous.
There was a brief period fairly early on, between 10 and midnight on the first night, where I had to guard a side door to the town hall, which had been identified as a mortuary, and at that point I'm suddenly thinking the town that I grew up in, went to school in, its history will be changed forever because of this plane crash, and that was even before it was fully understood that this was a major crime we were talking about. That the scale of this plane crash had changed the nature of the town forever. And then in the days that followed, when the scale of just seeing passengers come into this town hall and be lined up in the whole of the floor, it was 2 badminton courts and slightly bigger than that, that hall space was taken up to the point that a mortuary had to be opened up at the ice rink, which was a far better venue for that operation. But just to see the scale of that was really something that many of us reflect on, and I always feel for the older guys actually who had families, that they could relate to the loss of children and so on. It really hit them very hard.
It started to affect me because again you're the mother hen, and these were the 1988. This was the days before post-traumatic stress was thought about, and. When I arrived, they said, "What do you need?" I'm a control at the place called Petrevie. They controlled us near Edinburgh. What do you need? What do you need? And the first thing I said is, "We don't need anything. We need the helicopters down because there's going to be an air-to-air collision." And the next thing I think we're going to need, I don't know why I said it, psychiatric help after this, because I'd done a recce and seen what it was about, and it was horror. And when I got back and I was writing the reports, and these are high reports to the military, they were going all the way to the government. Maggie Thatcher was in charge then, and I was writing the reports to the late at night on the 24th, Christmas Eve, 23rd, sorry, Christmas Eve time, and the guys were coming in, 1 o'clock in the morning, but it wasn't the single guys, it was the married guys. They were the ones who struggled with it, because we were seeing children, we were seeing Christmas presents, and I had about 8 of them come in during the night. And I didn't know what, because hopefully I'm a caring person. That's what I've kind of made my name at, and they all mattered to me. But you can only take so many people's problems on. And then I didn't really understand who helps me with it. We
would be the first police officers in uniform that would be seen from coming in from the east side of the town. And this farmer drew up with a pickup truck at the Bridge Street door there. Saw us and asked what he should do with this debris that he'd found in his farmyard, and there'd been emergency chutes from the aircraft doors and things that he had in the back of this pickup truck. So we agreed it would be easiest to take the debris from the pickup truck and put it in the side of the town hall there, in a little storage area there, and we helped for 5 minutes with this, and then he kind of didn't know what to ask, but he said, "I have this young child," and in the front seat of his pickup truck was, right enough, this young child wrapped in what seemed to be a duffel coat or something like that. Very blonde hair, and just a touch of mud on the cheek, and really didn't look apparently injured, but was a child from the plane who'd clearly been killed, and he'd picked up the child in the field and decided to bring her down. I think it was made even more poignant by the fact it was such a young, small child that was brought in and so on. We laid the child to rest in the corner of the badminton court there, and the farmer went off back into the darkness. My colleague took his details, and that was it.
I've struggled with it. I'm a lot better now, but I will struggle with it till the day I die, sadly, because it's a thing you can't forget. And if you can forget that, you're not human. But there's huge good come out of this tragedy, because we did this cycle to Syracuse, we did this cycle to get 35 of the students home who were on the plane, and we met so many of their relatives, and I've spent my life meeting relatives in the mountains, and there's times when people, after grieving, very few people come immediately, they come in time scales, 5, 10, 15, 30 years, and we met so many of the relatives, but they were so upbeat, so glad to see us, so glad that their kids had got home at last. So there was a phenomenal good came out of our trip, and there wasn't any hatred for them. You know, I met a husband who lost 4 in the family, and his daughter had lost, you know, she was 18 or 8 months old when her sister was killed in the plane crash. Her mother was killed, I think her granny and grandpa, you know, it's terrible. But there was no hatred now, it was all, you know, how do we stop this happening in the future, and let's you know, make the world a better place. So it was huge, and when we ended up at the university, it was just incredible.
I think in the years that followed, you start to wonder who that child was. I didn't know at the time, and it was only this year really that through conversation and the cycle event that we did, we had a visitor come from the US whose sister had also fallen in the same farm, so we had cause to go up there with this visitor. And we found the son of this farmer there, and he, like usual in Lockerbie, was prepared just to drop everything and host this visit, very impromptu. So it was quite a moment for me to discover exactly who the child had been, and that it was his dad that had brought the youngster down. And he also said his dad had really struggled with it over the years too, that you know, he'd suffered depression and all sorts of kind of anguish through that, and the experiences of that night. So sadly his dad had passed away in the last few years, and he himself had been involved, younger than I was, David. He was 16 or 17 in picking up some of these passengers and so on. And this was his first opportunity really to talk about it. So it's been quite a moment for the town really, but some people are now talking about it for the first time.
Lockerbie took us into our hearts, you know, at the time. And as a rescuer, being there, they'd lost 11 people. Their town was wrecked. It was just incredible. Yet that night when I arrived and said at the school, get sorted out, get some food, the ladies of Lockerbie had set up a field kitchen in the school and were feeding us. And they fed us till we were there, and fed people for weeks and weeks and weeks in different places. But when we were out next day and I was bringing them back, all these ladies were helping us, because we were all struggling. Everybody was struggling, no matter, nobody was speaking. And these ladies came out, there's a tea. So to me it was a great thing to go back to Lockerbie and thank them. And one of the ladies came to America with us, which was wonderful. And I've written about it, because I do a little blog, and I wrote about my journey when I'd cycled around the area, and I found that quite hard, because, you know, there's a lot of flashbacks. But meeting this lady Josephine and some of the ladies that helped us, but we'd never spoken about it. Yeah, and I got about 50 letters to hand to her from people, from dog handlers from all over the UK, from mountain rescue, from police, from the army. It's just wonderful. So there was huge kindness and goodness come out of that tragedy.
This year marks the first year that I've not been in the police. I retired earlier in the year after 30 years, and it's a chance for me to reflect on how things were then for me as an 18-year-old and how I am now as a middle-aged man with children of my own. Both of my children, in a twist of fate, ended up at Syracuse University on the scholarship there at the age I was at 18. My son's just back earlier this year from that, and they made a huge number of friends through the scholarship, many of whom were parents of the students who were killed. So between my daughter and my son, they introduced us to all sorts of families. So I've had time to reflect on some of the positive things that have come from that, the friendships that have grown up, and the admiration that there is for what was done in Lockerbie by the townspeople, the emergency services, and thousands of people there, and mutually what the families have done to make the most of their lives in the aftermath of this loss. Everyone lost someone. In many cases they lost everything, and they didn't let that defeat them.
The families we met were tremendous people. Scotland and America and Britain and America, there is a huge bond there, and they couldn't thank us enough. And we met loads of relatives at the Memorial Day up at Syracuse, and I just can't believe it. And when we finished the cycle, which was very, very emotional, going up to the big memorial at the university, which is everybody's naming it, the 260 victims, there was a huge media thing, as you can imagine. And because it was a Lockerbie's day, it's not my day, I was an outsider from the... I kind of sneaked away and walked to the memorial on my own because I hadn't seen it, because we hadn't actually gone there yet. Everybody was doing the media. And I did a couple of minutes of my own up there to kind of thank, to say, just to help clear my head. I looked around and there was all these families. And they were all making sure I was all right. Incredible. So, and I'm upset, as you can see, but that was huge, because all my friends suffered, But there was a great kind of grieving coming back, and they appreciated what we did. Because my people, and the people who were on the rescue and recovery, a lot of them were young people. They'd never seen anything like this. And when I said these were just young people like your family, there was a huge bond there. So to me, and I'm glad I'm emotional, because you've got to be if you're not emotional, you're not a person, really, I don't think. And that, to me, that was a great healing, and I felt like a wave coming over me. And the families were just wonderful, wonderful. So the cycle was a great thing, and Colin did so well by doing it, and it was hard, it was a nightmare. Physically, and I got quite ill with it, and I'm still recovering from it, but the team we had, the people we had, and the kind of bonds we got were just, I can never thank people enough. It was incredible.